Welcome to the Conscious Pivot Podcast with international speaker, business mentor, best-selling author of Pivot, and your host, Adam Markell. The Conscious Pivot shares the stories and wisdom of people who have successfully reinvented some area of their business and personal life. You'll gain powerful insights into how you can fully embrace new opportunities, increase your performance, and master the art and science of innovation and resilience. So please join Adam as he guides you on your conscious pivot.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Conscious Pivot Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Markell, and I am so happy to be here in this moment. I feel great joy as I'm sitting here, and there's definitely a distinction or a difference, I believe, between joy and happiness. And I'm not knocking happiness. Let's just say it's a good thing for sure to feel happy. But the way I personally look at the difference between those two things is that when I'm happy, I tend to have things going my way. That's basically it. When things are going my way, I'm happy. And that's not often the case. I mean, yeah, I have nothing but blessings in my life and lots of things to be grateful for. So I have plenty to be happy about. And yet at the same time, it's not my goal to be happy. It's not really my goal on a spiritual level, I guess, to have things always happen just the way I want them to. I think that's unrealistic. I don't know that sets me up for success. It probably doesn't set you up for success all that much as well. But joy is different. Joy, I think, is really accessible to all of us. And by joy, I mean the way I feel inside, and that I consciously choose to feel good in my circumstances, regardless of whether they're going my way or not. And by that, I mean, even when I'm doing the things that I might not want to be doing in the moment. We've got two big dogs that we love and have been with us a long time, Wilson and Duncan, Willie and Duncan. And walking them when it's cold at night or it's raining out, or when they decide at the least sort of obvious moment to do their business. And I got to figure out, I got to go get a bag. I don't have a bag with me. I got to figure out, cleaning that all up. And it could get be something I would just be annoyed by. And I catch myself in those moments, instead of being annoyed, using that as an opportunity to just feel the way I want to feel joyful, even while I'm doing something that maybe is not what I would choose to be doing, like walking in the cold rain and cleaning up after the puppies. And it reminds me too of just a few weeks ago when I was having a conversation with a dear friend about his habit of gratitude. And I think a habit of gratitude is so important. And he basically was sharing with me how he blesses everything all the time. He's just constantly in blessing mode, in gratitude mode. So in this moment right now, I am in joy. I am feeling great. Certainly, I think things are going my way in this moment because I get to spend this time with you. I get to spend time with a really dear friend, somebody that I'm going to introduce you to in a moment, that we're going to get to spend some time, all of us together, in conversation. And that's great. I feel joy for that. But regardless of whether things were going well for me in this moment, I just feel grateful. I feel really happy to be alive, joyful in this moment, feeling peace inside. So in this moment, wherever you are right now, wherever you're consuming this content, you might be doing, a million different things. I get messages from people that they listen to it while they're exercising, they're on the treadmill, people from all over the world. Some people are at work when they're doing, some people are walking their dogs or just taking a walk by themselves or in their bathroom, walking around the house. So wherever it is that you are right now, take a moment, take a breath, pause for just a moment. Keep your eyes open if you're driving, if that's you're operating any heavy machinery. Keep your focus, but take a moment for yourself right now. A breath to feel grateful, to feel joy inside. That feels so good. In fact, let's take a breath and release it with a sound, if you're willing, to just release it with a big ah. Yeah. Ah. And breathe in and release it. It feels so wonderful. So I said I have a blessing this morning, and that is to be able to spend time with a friend and share that conversation with all of you. So that's really exciting. I'm going to read a little bit from her bio. She's a pretty amazing woman, and not a pretty amazing woman. She is an amazing woman. And then we're going to hear directly from her. All right. So without further ado, Jennifer McLean is an internationally acclaimed healer, author, speaker, edge pusher. I love that, and I know that to be true about her. And transformational change agent. She is the creator of the renowned healing accelerant, the spontaneous transformation technique, also known as STT, that delivers instant transformation and healing in 7 to 10 minutes. With over 800 practitioners in training in this unique system, it is quickly becoming the go-to for creating rapid change in extreme times. For more than 2 decades, STT has helped tens of thousands of individuals shift their energy in the body. Jennifer is also the author of 5 books. She's appeared on Fox, ABC, CBS, online summits, and covered in renowned publications. She is also the creator of dozens of online healing programs and is the producer and host of the renowned Healing with the Masters online media franchise that's reached more than 1 million people in over 17 seasons. Jennifer, welcome to the Conscious Pivot podcast. Welcome to the show today.
Hi, Adam. It's awesome being here. Thank you so much for inviting me. That was a great opening. Wow.
Way cool. Way cool. Well, I'm going to ask you in this moment, what is something that you are grateful for?
You know, I am so grateful for the crazy crap that shows up in my life that is constantly asking me to wake up. Truly, I know that sounds weird, but I've gotten to the point now where I love the moments of resistance, because that is where my gold is every day. And when I use it, that's what I'm grateful for, is when I use it and I don't wallow, I can find places within me that I didn't think were possible. I can find places within me that provide the breadcrumbs to who I am, what my soul is, and what I'm here to do. So, and again, that sounds weird. And a year or two ago, I would have never said that. Yeah. But I love my life. I have a great life, and I love when my life shows me who I am.
Yes, indeed. Why would you say that a year or two ago you might not have thought that or believed that?
Because I resisted the resistance. I fought the resistance. I shook my hand at God and said, "How dare you? I'm a good person." And I've come to realize it has nothing to do with that at all. It has nothing to do with victim or whether I'm being punished or not, or rewarded for that matter. I've even changed the way I look at deserving, because no one is deserving. Because if you're deserving, it means that someone else isn't. It means somehow at one point you weren't deserving. So I think a couple of years back, I was in such a different state. I had a lot more ego going on. I was adorable in the ego, I have to add.
Adorable in the ego. Aren't we all adorable in the ego?
Right? Adorable in the ego.
If we can love ourselves even when we're aware of the fact that we're in our ego, you know, in the part of our ego that's not the healthy part, or the part that's kind of overstepping into other people's.
Yep. And so I was in ego. I was into. I talked a good game about being of service, and money was second. But I realized in hindsight that wasn't true. But you know, a lot of this stuff is deep in the subconscious. So I was doing the best I could until I could do better.
So things were good. Things were rolling along. You were winning the game, probably winning the money game.
I was winning the money. I was running a $6 million company, and I was very successful. You know, Healing with the Masters was a huge hit and reached many people, and it made me happy that it was very transformational. To this day, I still have people come up to me and tell me how much it changed them and helped them. And but I realized in hindsight that was actually secondary. It makes me sad to think about that now. But I did do good, despite the fact that my ego was a little bit overwrought.
Yeah. Well, you can cut yourself some slack there too, right? Because you know, if you'd never created a massively successful company before, it was all new territory. Not that you know that that each day isn't new territory anyway. Because as you said, it's interesting. You said none of us are deserving. If any of us are deserving, then that means someone else isn't deserving. It's a very interesting perspective. I've not heard someone say that before. So I want to unpack that just a little bit. Would you share a little bit more about your philosophy there?
Sure. Yes. Well, I am a philosophy major.
Is that right?
Yes,
That's so funny.
And so I investigate the energy behind words, because a lot of confusion in communication comes from the meaning that we have personally attached to words. Someone says a series of words, we throw a whole whack of meaning like a monkey throws poop, right? And we say, that's how I am going to now base my happiness on what those words mean to me. So one of the words that I used a lot was deserving, and it wasn't serving me. I deserve it. So when I deserve it, it means that I don't have it. When I'm in a place of I deserve it, I'm in a place of entitlement. I deserve because of something, right? Instead, and this goes along with a philosophy of doing to get. And I teach a lot about prosperity. And doing to get is not necessarily how it works. Now, it's sometimes the first step. I want that thing, and then I need that thing. And in order to get that thing, I have to do something. And so it's understandable, but it's actually not the pathway to abundance. The pathway to abundance is being to receive. So this notion of deserve goes along with a doing to get kind of energy. But when you are just you, and so many people do not know who just you is, including me a couple of years ago, right? I didn't know, even though I thought I did. And so when you know who you are, you know at your core who you are, and then you can allow that to fuel every part of your life. You're now being, and that creates a natural mechanism of opening that abundance can kind of land upon easily and effortlessly. And so, yeah.
So deserving, when you're thinking about the meaning of deservedness, it was in a context of this is entitlement.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's not to say that we aren't all deserving.
Yeah.
Right. Because on some level, there's no inequality of that, right? That we're all as deserving as the next person of whatever the moment has in store for us, right? This is so beautiful that if we're present, and we occupy the moment, then we're in a state of being able to, we're deserving, and we can receive anything that's there for us.
Sure. I mean, that particular, everyone has, like I said, meaning thrown at words, and I unpacked that word so much that it just changed it for me, so that it's not even part of my vocabulary anymore. But yeah, you can throw the meaning of deserving as being a place of being. Sure. Sure. I mean, again, you can throw meaning at anything. And if it works for you, great. Seriously. If it works for you, great. I'm not here to bash the word deserving, truly.
No, it's such a great way to look at something differently. And so even receiving, there's always this bit of a tug of war between giving and receiving. And my dad used to, and still says this from time to time to me, that there's a front and back to everything. So this front and back
of the hand. Yep.
Yeah. Receiving and giving. And how could one be better than the other if they're two sides of the same coin, or if they are mutually dependent upon one another? In order for there to be giver, there has to be a receiver, and vice versa. But it's interesting because, I think it's a, well, you said you love your life. I want to explore that a little bit more, because your business was doing really well. And then with the economy and other things, I'm sure, like many businesses, including the ones that I've been involved in, there were challenges. So could you walk us through a little bit of that, and what the sort of the pivot was for you there? And what was the pivot? Was the pivot something you did? I'm guessing probably not, but who knows? Or was it something that you were being? And Was it more of a pivot in the head? Was it a pivot in the heart? Was it a pivot in some other area of your life? I'd love to just unpack that with you a bit.
Yeah, sure. So I have a philosophy that my soul is kind of the guiding force, and that if I connect with the soul and listen to the inspirations, the impulses, the I am pulses of my soul, then it will guide me on a pathway that is so much better than my mind could ever imagine. That has also been the battle of my life, is to listen to the soul and not the fears and worries and upsets and stresses that my mind creates. And so I was stressed out in my business, stressed out. I am not a natural manager. I'm a visionary CEO. So I'm more in the vision than I am in the day-to-day. And it's difficult. The day-to-day of any business is not necessarily easy. Of course, that's a belief that could maybe change if my point of view changed. I'm throwing meaning at that. I'm
Sure.
aware of that. And so I was not necessarily happy. And I was the definition of success. But I've come to realize that the pivot point came when I basically was burnt out and I couldn't really do it anymore. And the market agreed with me. You know, the business that I was on, I was the first to do the whole healing teleseminar. I did it before anyone did. And then a whole bunch of people started a year later looking at what I did and how much income I generated. And then a bunch more people and so on. And this is the nature of business in particular, which is it inevitably always becomes commoditized. So a good thing becomes commoditized because it's a good thing. And there's these bandwagon jumpers that say it's a good thing. So and I knew that was going to happen. I was a brand and business strategist in the tech industry for 17 years. So I knew it was coming. And I did what I needed to do knowing it was coming. And yet there's more than just the business A to B to C to D. There's the soul. And the soul said, you're done with this. And so when the soul says you're done with something, it doesn't matter how hard you hang on and what fingernails are left when you're done. Your soul has said you are moving on, period.
That's such a great visual. I mean, people watching this right now or listening to this are going, oh my God, I completely get what that is. Yes. How often in our lives how many of you right now, even in your day-to-day lives, are hanging on, with your fingernails to something that the soul
has said no.
It said no to.
It said no to. And your listeners are probably going, there's an aha moment when you go, yep, that's right. My soul said no. And so it doesn't matter what you do. And you look around the marketplace and other people are still doing okay. And then you make excuses and you say, well, these people aren't doing as well as they used to, and you're doing like crap. And so the mind is having a hard time. But when we move from that place of doing, what do I do to improve my business, into a place of being, to me, that is true success. So from a financial perspective, I went from 6 million to 1 million. That's a big jump. And, I let go of all my entire team. And it's been a very, very intense time. And there's been many moments of stress. And I'm coming very recently to what I said I appreciate. I appreciate all that happened that brought me to this moment, because I, as a soul, am so much more successful at 90% less of my business than I ever was there. So the outward look of success, of money and financial abundance and all that stuff was great. But I realize now that I was not happy. I was not in joy. I couldn't even find joy. And now I find joy every day. I actually work a lot less. It's only me. I'm a full-on solopreneur again. And I'm actually having fun as a solopreneur. I'm having fun because I'm exploring things. My soul is in my business again, which it wasn't before. And I definitely abdicated my business to people who didn't care as much, And so I know that there's a pathway to a little bit more income. I can feel it. And it doesn't matter, because as long as I'm living my core, I know that divine supply is always there, as long as I'm living my core. And I recently kind of really understood what my core is. Do you mind if I share?
I was going to ask you anyway, so this is great. You're
So
you're
cool.
gonna do my follow-up question.
Sorry, dude.
It's beautiful. I'm gonna sit back and have a cup of coffee.
Okay, I'll see you later. I recently discovered that my soul is a giver. That's what my soul is. My soul loves to give, loves to give. 93% of my business has always been giving away stuff for free. And it wasn't a business. I realize in hindsight, a lot of my business decisions were soul decisions, right? That place of being rather than doing. So I decided, I've discovered very recently, just within the last week, truly that the nature of my soul is to give. And what that means is that when I give, I get filled up. That's how you know you've landed on it. Oh my God, it brings tears to my eyes. When I give, I get filled up. And I got confused because I thought I needed to receive. Now, that part of the giving creates an energy of receiving. It creates a value exchange that creates a natural ability to receive. So I was experimenting with this, and I looked at my friend, and I said, so what's her core? And her core is to help to change the dynamics of any situation from negative to positive through love. That's her core. When I talked to her about it, she's like, oh my God, that's it. That's where she gets filled up. And then another friend of mine, I asked her, what is she? And we discussed it, and she realizes that she's fertilizer. She helps people grow. She's fertilizer. And so when we know that part of us, and it's really basic, it's very kindergarten-y, when we finally get to know.
Good way to put it. Yeah.
What is our soul? Then we can just be that without any conditions or attachments or expectations. If we could just be that part of our soul, man, it just makes everything simpler. We don't have to do anything to improve. We don't have to do anything to get there. There's no there anymore. There's just being.
This is so beautiful. It's never an accident about anything, right? I don't believe in randomness. And you and I connected some years ago, actually, at a TLC meeting. We're both lucky enough to have that organization as part of our.
That's a real blessing.
It is. It's a blessing. You and I got to share some tequila one night, which was a
really
lot of fun. But we'll save that for another time. There's probably people going, tell us the story about the tequila. Story. But there's just no accidents. And only a couple of weeks ago, actually it was 2 weeks ago, I think, I was doing a Facebook Live where I was unpacking some thoughts on purpose. And, it was about identity first and then purpose. And I was sharing that my own personal belief is that our purpose isn't a doing it all, not surprising to hear what you're saying, but is a being, in fact. And the being ourselves, to discover ourselves, to be our presence, the authentic presence that is us, is our purpose.
That's right.
And so people who are looking for a job or activity or a call, calling or a foundation, someplace that they can volunteer or give, they're seeking a purpose in that way, again, is all on the outside.
That's right.
And all the juice and all the fruit is on the inside.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did did a program recently called the Feel Better Challenge, and on day 2, we looked at journey to our core and journey to the descriptors of our gifts, and it's very similar. The descriptions of our gifts, like one of them said, "I'm a really good listener." And if that's basically their core, they got it. And their purpose is to listen. My purpose is to give. My friend's purpose is to change the dynamic of the negative. My other friend is this beautiful fertilizer to help grow souls. And there's what else could we possibly do that's better than that?
I haven't found anything yet.
What's your purpose?
My purpose is to be a channel for love. So
there we go.
So when I am being myself, being my actual authentic self, I am just so genuinely working in the pursuit of opening hearts and being a model for love and opening a space for love. So whether it's in conversations with people, whether it's podcasting or delivering programs. I know you had been to our More Love marketing program just a few months ago. I mean, More Love marketing. I mean, our company's called More Love Media. So, yes. So love
there it is.
Yes, exactly. So
There's the
go ahead, please.
There's the brand from the core. So this can go into the world. This is not woo-woo stuff. This can actually go into the world. So now that I always knew that giving was my thing, but now I know that giving fills me up. That's the key. When you get your purpose, you know what fills you up. And when you're full, it's like a pitcher that doesn't have any water in it can't share anymore. So if you keep filling your pitcher, I know that my pitcher gets full when I give. And I could have 1,000 specialists tell me, stop doing so much for free. And I'm going to say, F you.
Respectfully.
Respectfully.
You can't live my core.
You don't know my soul. And so many coaches are out there. This is a little pet peeve of mine, are not operating from this place. And that's why you're such an amazing coach, because you operate from the place of seeing people who they are and adapting the coaching to the individual, and instead of you have to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. The steps are all there, but they're overlaid, inlaid, and infused with the soul, which changes the dynamics of each step. So we can bring this core into the world in a business. And when we do that with consciousness, and to me, consciousness is shining the light of consciousness, being so present with, I am a giver and it fills me up. And it's almost all I require is to give, to then be filled up by that giving. And in that moment, allowing that opens up the space for us to be in contact with this greater part of us, to receive the I impulses, the impulses of what's next. And then when we do that, we're living a life that has so much grace and ease. Now, does life still not give us amazing, interesting turns? Well, of course it does. It's life.
They're called pivots.
Yes.
Except the question is, how is it that you respond and that you're able to utilize, even alchemize, create alchemy from those turns and those twists, those pivots in a conscious way? Or I should say that the alchemy to me is the consciousness that you apply.
That's cool.
Those turns in the road, those unexpected, and even the ones, as you said, it's interesting, so many companies don't make it. They don't make it past their first year. They don't make it past their 5th year. The statistics are all over the place, but they're all in the high 90s. It's 95%, 97%, et cetera. I mean, even the most successful companies of all time, when they haven't pivoted, when they haven't innovated, when they haven't been able to look at the road ahead and realize that change is coming and that they would have to adapt and would have to potentially reinvent or iterate something new, whether it be a product, a service, or a way of conducting their business. If they didn't do that, they disappeared. I mean, Lehman Brothers is a great example.
Kodak,
Polaroid, tons and tons of those companies. In fact, in the 1955 list of the 500 most successful companies in the world, which was called the Fortune 500, that's when it was created. Of that list, 88% of those companies today don't exist, but yet the products and services for the most part do. The industries do, but they don't.
They don't.
Those were the 500 most prolific, incredibly successful, gargantuan-sized companies at that time, and they're not around because they couldn't answer those questions.
Steve Jobs is such a perfect example of this. This is a man who lived from his core. He wasn't the nicest guy because he lived in a world that didn't appreciate that or honor that. So he had to fight and scrap in order to do that. But he was able to pivot Apple several times because he was able to just move from his core. And it's not a strategy. It is a strategy, but it's not a strategy in a set of tactics anymore, right? And this is business. I can't wait till business starts catching up to this idea that it's not a tactic, it's not a strategy, it's the core that guides us, that allows us to connect with a greater part of us, that guides us to what's next. And sometimes it's completely reinventing your company like I have. I'm 100% focused now on getting my spontaneous transformation technique into the world. And it feels so good because guess what I'm doing? I'm giving.
Exactly. And that's your core.
It's so fun.
Oh my goodness. It couldn't be more fun for me too, because we're in the process of writing our next book, which is called The Next Pivot. And it is about just what we're discussing.
Oh, cool.
Because it
Wow,
isn't.
what a coincidence.
What a coincidence, right? Because the next pivot is the next, it's the next thought you think. It's the next moment in time that you have an opportunity to be present, to be guided instead of being on guard, to be guided instead of having to protect things. Instead of protecting things, you get to project into the future what it is that your being wants.
It
that
is
your
a
soul is
calling
for.
Courageous path.
Of course it is.
In our culture, that is a courageous path, because the level of faith and trust that you have to have in your soul's journey is profound, and it creates the most amazing things. And yet what we know and what we've experienced, like an old comfortable slipper, we don't want to stop that. You know, one day we look down and that freaking slipper of our life has holes in it and is useless. And yet we hang on to that slipper because it's known. The greatest risk is not to risk.
Well, that's the quiet desperation that Henry David Thoreau spoke about.
That's exactly right.
People living, the masses living lives of quiet desperation is this sort of ignoring your soul's calling, or the development of the soul, because you're protecting the status quo. And that's what leads to extinction. That's what leads to death. How would you define the soul? Because you're a definitions person. So I'm going to ask you, like, this is like a super soul Sunday question. I'm going to be Oprah for a moment. All right. How do you define the soul, Jennifer?
That's actually, no one's ever asked me that. I'm going to have to think about that for a sec. What is the soul? The soul is this little prism that refracts the light of a greater part of us, the infinite and the eternal. Our soul is this beautiful prism that refracts the light of all the pieces of us, of the being, of the core of who we are, that shows up as our gifts. Okay, so it's like we're this little filter that this infinite eternal energy moves through to refract through us into the world, to create something in the world that supports our fellow co-conspirators, to support our fellow conspirators of love, which every single person is. So the soul is this beautiful jewel of love that has the opportunity, if it's not covered up with layers of beliefs that have been created from moments of trauma and upset, which is usually where beliefs come from. Not usually, always. Beliefs come from a moment of upset that we made a conclusion about what life is. And they create these little layers that dim our light. Our light can never be extinguished, ever. What was meant for us can never be lost, ever. But the soul, the opportunity is for us to beautifully and gently peel away those layers of beliefs that we have created, that are now creating the prism of creation in our life, and move into that pure definition of who we are at our core, and love it and embrace that core so profoundly that light not only shines through the prism but expands. And the prism, the light that's being refracted through that prism is so strong that no one can ever dim it again.
So at a certain point, you recognized that your soul was saying no. And what came up for me when I heard you say that was, and many people listening to this would be thinking, I think, the same thing. What were the signs? What were the signs that your soul said no? Because if what we're wanting to do is listen and then obey, pay attention, and do something in response to our core talking to us, what were the signs that your soul was calling out and saying no to the business or the way you were doing business?
Unfortunately, at this time in humanity's evolution, the clearest sign that your soul is wanting to change is pain and suffering. So when we are in pain and suffering, it's a very clear sign. So I had a lot of physical upset. Um, I had a lot of physical upset. And I had a lot of emotional upset in those moments too. And my thoughts were not happy thoughts. And the outside world then reflects that. We think that it's that thing out there that's making me unhappy, but it's me unhappy that's creating the thing that appears to be making me unhappy, right? So it's not, if someone out there has to change, if your happiness is relying on someone else changing, you're in big freaking trouble, because there's only you that can change. And so when I felt like I was dying. I really did. I felt like I was dying. And in that moment, I'm like, I've got to change. And what happened from that day forward is that every time something showed up, I call it going to the neural pathway gym, right? In that moment, I created a new neural pathway of, no, I'm not doing this anymore. And I created a new neural pathway of, I'm going to say yes to the things that fill me up. And I actually didn't exactly know what those were then. And so life will then continue to show up in all its craziness to reveal to me the things that were ready to be healed and seen and observed, and the limiting beliefs that I had. Man, I mean, I just look back now and I'm so different now. I'm just so different. I have so much more kindness and compassion. My sister passed away in 2013. It was a very, very, she was my best friend. And for the first time in my life, I had compassion. I didn't even know what it was. So much so, I saw the difference between who I was before she died and who I was after she died so profoundly that I wrote a letter to my tribe apologizing. Because here I am, a healer, with not close to the compassion I required to be a healer. And I got it. I made a decision to be a healer. Life showed up and said, well, that's your soul's journey for sure. Then there's a few things we're going to have to change here. One of them is you better be kinder, better be more compassionate. And not only to others, but to yourself.
Yes.
And so that, we have these moments of pivot that unfortunately often show up as pain and suffering, because that's what gets most of us off the couch. Unfortunately, I believe there is a day coming when that doesn't have to be the case anymore. But for most of us, that's it. And so that's a sign. And the opportunity for me now is to recognize it in the moment and use it as a point of resistance now that is a good point of resistance, right? And that's why I call it the gym, because resistance training at the gym grows muscles. Resistance training in life is using what's showing up that is uncomfortable as a foil to push against, to grow the better parts of us. So I go to the neural pathway gym every single freaking day.
I'm thinking the sets that we could create from that, right?
Right.
Going to do cardio, going to do abs, we're going to work on our shoulder.
Yeah.
That's right. The neural pathway gym. Well, it's a mutual friend, I believe, that created a company called NeuroGym. So John asked.
Yes, that's right.
By that name. So
that's right. Neural Gym.
Partly by that name anyway.
He does good stuff.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I have loved every second of this conversation. And I want to, so when we talk about the neural pathway gym, it reminds me of something that I'm just now thinking of as a workout of sorts. I call it a practice, but we've created rituals. I've created rituals in my life that have helped me to maintain that presence, the wisdom that I want to have in the moment versus the wisdom I get to have when I've fucked something up, and then later on get to look back and go, okay, I made these mistakes. Now I have the wisdom of the error. We all love that, right? That's something we all want to sign up for.
Humility is great.
That's
Yay!
Right. I want to make that many more mistakes so I can gain that great moment.
I'm so excited.
I want to have that great joyful moment, right? Of wisdom from having to look back. Yeah. The opportunity to make spontaneous right decisions is really a key thing. And I remember several years ago hearing Deepak talk about spontaneous right decision making. Might have been in one of his books from early on. But in any event, what are some of the rituals that you have, or conscious practices, habits even, that keep you on the path that you've been describing, which is, a path
Yeah.
of compassion and kindness and humility and presence?
Well, there's my spontaneous transformation technique is actually, I designed it and created it for me. So I used it on me long before I started using it on my clients. And it's an actual practice. And it's a practice of using the moment of upset, of which I had a lot. I had a very, very difficult childhood with sexual abuse and alcoholism and narcissism. It was an all-star dysfunction.
Sounds like the trifecta there. Yeah.
It was awesome. Yeah. So my soul chose something really difficult, likely so that I could have compassion and capacity to really see how everyone is feeling. I created spontaneous transformation because I was extremely reactionary. I was a very reactionary person. I came by it honestly. My father was a reaction-aholic. And so I used it. Instead of allowing it to spiral me down, I used it. And so I use it every day now still. So every time I move into a moment of reaction, which is a lot less, instead of 100 times a day, it's maybe once. Sometimes I might even go a day without it. But I use it in that moment. And I go into the spontaneous transformation technique, which is know what is happening in the moment, what's upsetting, what are you feeling, what's the emotion behind it, where is that in your physical body? That's the next step. Moving into a state of observer, which is detached and yet supportive. Moving in, that's really one of the most important steps. Bringing that observer into that place in your body, seeing that in that place is a younger version of you that got stopped in a moment of upset, that created a set of beliefs and repressed a bunch of emotions in that moment. So then you just allow the little one to just express the emotions that it wouldn't have been safe to express the first time it happened. And finally unwind and purge, if you will, that original upset, which is fueling the current beliefs deep in the subconscious. And then you allow that little one to feel and express and feel and express. It's so simple. And some people don't believe it until we do it. But it's so simple. And then you ask that, it creates a tremendous healing. And then I ask the little one, what is it that you need now? Which shows me the truth of who I am, the light of who I am. So I do that process every day. I also do another process called the Ho'oponopono.
Yes,
and
forgiveness practice.
Yes, a forgiveness practice I do
Mm.
every morning and every night. The 15 minutes in the morning before I get up, 15 minutes at night before I go to bed. I do that practice every day. I do it as a global thing for my tribe.
Mm-hmm.
So I say to my whole tribe, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. And I do the STT version of it. I overlay some of the concepts of STT over top of it.
Yeah. So
And,
for our listeners who are not familiar with Ho'oponopono, would you teach it? Go ahead and teach it.
Sure.
Because I love it as well, and I love to share it with people.
So I'll teach you the STT version that I use because part of the STT process is to engage the mind. When the mind is chewing on something, the mind is the manifester of the world. And when it's chewing on something, it allows you to manifest with clear thought. So I like to give the mind lots to chew on. I love to recognize, recognize. So when the mind is recognizing, it's now a partnership with the heart. So that's why I do the spontaneous transformation version. So I'll share that. The prayer goes like this, and I've changed the order a little bit. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you, thank you. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you, thank you. That's the prayer.
That's the traditional prayer. Exactly.
That's essentially it. I think the traditional one starts with I love you. But what I've discovered is that the mind cannot often go straight to I love you when it's pissed off someone.
Right.
So what I do is I say, if you want, we can all do it right now. Think of someone you're upset with who's been upsetting you, did something to you, and they done you wrong. Okay, so think about that person.
Mm-hmm.
And now consider, has there ever been a time in your life when you've done something similar to someone else? Now, for some of you, it's very extreme what they did, and there's no way you would ever do that. But have you ever had a thought? Thoughts are equally as powerful as words and deeds. So have you ever had a thought about someone else similar to what this person did to you? And most of us can go, oh yeah, I've thought some pretty awful things about
Right.
people. Okay.
Might not have done it, but I had a thought about it.
Exactly. That's all that matters. And
Mhm.
that's the part in our soul knows when we've done something like that. And then we move into a state of judgment, even though it's deep in the subconscious. So it knows that we need to forgive ourselves for it. So Ho'oponopono is now considering the person on the periphery and saying to yourself, first of all, you say to the little one, I am so sorry for what happened, little one, that you created a coping mechanism to survive that may have hurt others through thought, word, or deed. So you say just to your beautiful little child, the younger version of you that is upset by this person, you just say, I'm so sorry for what happened. You had every reason to react the way you did to create the coping mechanisms and the belief that fell out of that may have now hurt other people. I'm so sorry for what happened. Please forgive me for those who I've hurt through thought, word, or deed by expressing these coping mechanisms that help me to survive. Please forgive me for those who I've hurt. Forgive me in turn for forgetting that I am innocent, that I was innocent in those moments and I forgot. Forgive me for forgetting. Forgive me for forgetting that I am love. And in those moments of upset, when I was expressing a coping mechanism to protect myself, I forgot I was love and I hurt another. Forgive me for forgetting that I'm love, and forgive me for forgive me for hurting another. Forgive me for hurting another. I'm so sorry, little one, for what happened to you. I'm so sorry for what you needed to do in order to survive that may have hurt others. Please forgive me for those who I've hurt. Then we move into, I love you. I love you. I mean, it's so much easier to love that little one, knowing that they were doing absolutely the best they could. And in fact, they were doing better because the things that they took on and the beliefs they took on helped them to survive. I love you. You say it to yourself, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. This is a good one for you, Adam. I love you. I love you. And then we say, thank you. Thank you for my life. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for the moment of self-healing. Thank you to the person who has become now the teacher, who has shown me the part of me that was ready to heal, shown me the part of me that I was ready to unwind and forgive. Thank you to that person. And you might even be able to turn to them and say, I love you. You might not, but you might be. And then just a round of it. I'm sorry, with the intention there. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you. Thank you.
Yes. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. Four beautiful statements.
Yeah.
That you can do at any time. I'm so glad this came out during this episode because I don't know that on a podcast I've actually discussed that specific process, or that just beautiful way of experiencing both self-forgiveness and forgiveness for everything, for all,
Yes.
for all, and for all that, all that is and was and will be. It's just a beautiful thing. I think Osho said that you can forgive every moment. And I read that so many years ago and didn't quite understand it, but it is really, and it is a depth, there's a depth of, I guess, sensitivity and compassion and wisdom even perhaps to realize that there is something to forgive in every moment.
Absolutely.
So just like there's something to be grateful for in every moment. I mean, those two things are just, talk about front and back of something that's a beautiful golden coin.
Yes, indeed.
Forgiveness and gratitude. Wow. What a blessing. I've so enjoyed our conversation today.
Me too.
Yeah.
It was really a blast.
Wow. Way cool. Way cool. Yes. Well, I want to thank you again for being on the show. And what typically I want to do, and we didn't get to do, I wanted to ask you if there was something about yourself that you wanted folks to know. We're going to create show notes for this. And so when it comes to your websites, and the work that you're doing, we'll put those all in the show notes. That way people can find out more about how they can work with you, because I would love it if people would do that, follow through and want to learn more and discover more and spend more time with you, because you give and give and give. And it's so great to know that that's a part of your soul's journey, to be such a great giving soul. And
yeah, I'm glad I know that now too.
Yeah.
It helps.
Right. Because then it doesn't, then you know what's cool about it. I'm just feeling that people who might feel that way might also think that they set themselves up to be taken advantage of, or that they put themselves second somehow, and that it's that they're not looking, because other people whose soul's journey is not to do that might say to them, hey, you're not being smart. You're not
That's right.
like financially or business wise astute.
That's right.
And so that's a challenge. And so thank you for being the giving soul that you are.
My absolute filled up pleasure.
Way cool. And so for all of you out there, whether again you're watching this or listening to this, wherever you are right now, I want to express a wish, a prayer, a hope, a gift for all of us. And that is that you wake up and I wake up, and Jennifer, that you wake up, that we all wake up tomorrow. We got to wake up today. And by waking up, I mean metaphorically, of course, that we wake ourselves up a little more today than yesterday. That's a good progression. The trajectory is positive if we're a little more conscious today than we were yesterday. So what a beautiful goal to have for tomorrow. And then there's also no guarantee. There's no guarantee that we'll wake up tomorrow, just like there wasn't a guarantee we'd wake up today. And I think that's really important, because as we do take that first breath of the morning, so many people are ritualistically, habitually reaching for their cell phones, and they're jumping out of bed to go get the coffee, get the kids, get the car, get to this, get to that. They get right into the doing mode. And where we started this conversation was about being. And so my wish and my hope and my prayer, as I said, is that we all wake up tomorrow. And in that moment that we are waking up and taking a deep conscious breath, that we realize that's a gift. There are people who will be taking their last breath in that moment. They will be taking their last breath as we're taking our first. And there will be babies born who are receiving their first breath of life as well. So it is a sacred moment. It's a moment we can be grateful for. So this sort of the beginning of the day is a powerful time to be planting seeds. And our subconscious is really rich soil to be planting seeds. So our 3-step morning waking ritual, really, it's that those first few seconds, I think, that are so precious, that we wake up, that we're grateful, that we're in gratitude in that moment for that breath. And that if you're willing to say it, I'm not wearing the t-shirt today, but I have it on. I've got it all around the office and all around the house. If you're willing to say these words, I love my life. I love my life. I love my life. It's a beautiful way to express yourself first thing in the morning, express what's most important, which is that you truly do love yourself. And I love myself. I love you, Jennifer. I love all of you out there, and wish you just, based on what Jennifer shared with us today, I wish for you that you are paying attention to your soul, that when your soul is speaking through whatever means it might be speaking, and it could be that it's pain and it's suffering, and it might be that it's speaking in a more gentle way to you, but that you're prepared, that you're open and willing to listen, and that you do in fact love your life, or that you're willing to be open to loving your life that much more. So have a beautiful rest of your day, your evening, wherever you are in this moment. Many, many blessings, and we'll see you soon. Ciao for now, everybody.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you now have the tools and greater insights to navigate your own pivot. Help us inspire others by sharing this episode and leaving your comments over at adammarkel.com/podcasts. For more tips, strategies, and support as you consciously pivot into a new business and lifestyle you love, join our Pivot community on Facebook at pivotfb.com.